Noah and I almost came to blows this week.
No, I mean, seriously. In fact, I tell you what. You keep going. Let me get some Telegram messages pulled up.
Okay. Yeah. So this is actually almost perfectly fitting in with the overall theme of this show, and that is Noah and I, as two passionate Linux users who are also very enthusiastic about the work that we do and why we do it.
And also, I'll just throw this in here. I think the biggest thing that comes to bite us when we have different views is you and I seldom disagree on anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, and also I want to talk about this separately, but you and I are also capable of having that very crucial, and I want to make this its own topic, the CEO to CEO conversation.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that's critical. But so this week, I felt myself falling into a bad pattern that is probably, I think, maybe my number one personality criticism. And that is I'm super observant and obsessive over details. And so the way that I have found to sort of normalize that, because not everybody else is I discourage myself from sharing the things that I observe because I feel like I'd be constantly criticizing people if I always shared those things.
Sure.
And then, you take somebody like Noah, who's busy, he's got an actual day job that turns out to be rather time intensive. He's got a family. I don't want to ride Noah. But at the same time, there is, to almost an irrational degree, nothing that I take more seriously than the quality of these shows. And those two things came into conflict this week because I wanted to make Last look and sound better. And I was getting to a point where I was willing to do whatever it took to get us over the hump. And that's directly where it came into conflict with something that Noah's been working towards for like his entire career. And you kind of summarized it well, Noah. So I kind of want to let you kind of describe it from here, because it turned out like two things of ours that otherwise we don't generally have any conflicts came into direct conflict with each other. And it's kind of funny because it both turns out to be around Linux.
Right. Yeah. We reached what I was calling an impasse. So the thing is you got my attention, and the way that you got my attention was basically, I think, the way that you phrased, the way you brought up your concerns and phrased them to me. And the first thing is the way that you phrased it was, you said you spoke from the concept of feelings, and you spoke as a concept of like a human being rather than, specific technical things. Like the specific technical things were encompassed in the message, but the heart and the breadth of the message was more, I'm emotionally concerned here. And right off that, just the way that stuff like that is phrased just hit me a totally different way. Yeah. It wasn't a problem. It was now you have emotionally drawn me into your problem. And it's not just, There's a technical issue that needs my assistance, which that's one of 1,000. Now it's, I have a friend that is, not very happy about something and it demands my attention. And so immediately I said, all right, I called in, I found out the things that absolutely had to be done this week and made arrangements to take care of those. And then I said, all right, the rest of the weekend, I'm going to spend working on JB stuff. And then that launched me into a series of thought, because I kept thinking, I thought, how did we get here? And why didn't I pick up on this earlier? Because this is a big deal. And what I came to the conclusion is, you have dedicated the last 10 years of your life to making something happen. And that is Jupiter Broadcasting and all of the shows. And I have dedicated the last 10 years of my life to getting myself and everyone that will listen to me away from Windows. And this week on Thursday or Friday, whatever day it was, we hit a point where those two passions intersected, but they intersected in a weird way, because I understand that in order to reach a large audience of converting people to Linux, they have to first watch the show. It doesn't matter how good of a point I make or what I have to say if nobody actually listens to it anyway. And at the other side of it, you have the conflict of, we go on the show every week and tell people, this is the application that you could use this week and try out. And here's a spotlight of something that Linux is doing great. And it's like a backhanded insult if we can't even do basic fundamental things for the show about Linux on Linux.
It's Thursday. I'm preparing emails for TechSnap, and about once a week I get an email that comes in, and it essentially says something like this: how come Alan looks so good in TechSnap and Noah looks so bad in Linux Action Show? Why don't you just do whatever you do for TechSnap in Linux Action Show? It's driving me crazy. And I think to myself, yeah, you're right. God, if we just used Windows on both ends of this call, it gets all of these extra problems out of our way, and it just looks a lot better. And that to me was just like, boy, we could just make this one change, guys. We just make this one change, and all of a sudden we've improved all of our production quality. And then it became to me in my mind, holy crap, this is like the simplest thing ever. And it's how many months into this, and we haven't tried this one thing? And then I started to get angry. Mm-hmm. Why haven't we solved this problem? It is literally as simple as a Windows box on one end. And then I kind of I bring in other things that sort of like spin that stronger. Like, God, if I had more money, I would just buy a Windows box and ship it to Noah and tell him to just use the goddamn thing. Yeah. Here's a Windows box, just use it. You could totally see that, right? And so that sort of spun up, and I started getting upset. And my first track was, well, why the hell hasn't he thought of this? Why the hell is this still a problem? Doesn't he respect the show? Doesn't he want more people to watch the show? Mm-hmm. Doesn't he understand how hard I've worked on all of this? Right. But I pretty quickly recognize that now, just because I've gotten to know myself over the years, that that is a position that only I have the privilege of looking at all of this from. Because only I am the one that chooses to make the sacrifices that I make to make these shows possible. And at the same time, I don't have the right to ever apply that thinking to other people, because this is the choice that I've made. And so then I slowed down and I realized, well, but what is actually happening is my feelings are being hurt.
Right.
I said, man, you've really hurt my feelings.
Right. But see, and maybe it's just a personality thing for me, but the way that I approach problems is just drastically different depending on how it's presented, and whatever it is, I can't even describe it, but the way that you formulated that message together just hit something to me, to where I literally I was in the middle of talking to a client when that and you did it in a muted chat, so I had no reason to read it, but after I saw the first couple lines, I couldn't focus on anything else, and I was like, I need to start focusing on this right now. And then it was awkward because I'm in the middle of something and I'm like, how do I get out of here? And I realized it's not possible. I can't leave for another hour. But I was useless. Like I was there. I was physically doing the actions, but my mind had checked out, and I had bought into what it is that you were concerned about at that point.
And I think, part of it is you have to kind of have to be picky about the people you work with, because I wouldn't have felt safe necessarily saying, hey, man, you hurt my feelings, because, I'm 34 years old, and that kind of sounds like something you say when you're 6. And so I had to know that I was talking to somebody that at the end of the day did have the same end goals in mind, and I could trust. And so that's why, it was because we've created a safe space over the years. That's why I was able to say that, not to make that sound all like, trigger happy and whatnot. But that difference right there, which is really the first time I've done this with another guy, I'll do it with a significant other, but another guy, that difference right there, I think it didn't make it a you and I fighting about the technicalities, because technically, damn it, Noah, you could install Windows, and technically we could have an HD call, right? Instead of having that, it was like, shit, we got this problem we haven't solved, and this thing's really important to me, and it's starting to hurt my feelings. We haven't solved it yet, and the reality is you weren't intentionally not solving it. You just happen to have a super strong feeling about installing Windows.
So there's actually a couple things, and again, I had a lot of time to kind of reflect and try and figure all this out. So it started where the first time this came up, which is actually at the beginning of this year, first time this ever came up, you would kind of hinted a little bit ahead of time of what might be coming. And so mentally I was prepared. And basically what I decided was, you have to make a decision, Noah. You have to decide if this anti-Windows thing is that important that you are willing, to draw a line in the sand. And that might mean that you decide, as the owner of a company, that's not the direction that Jupiter Broadcasting wants to go, and I have to be willing to live with the consequences.
Right. I mean, that's kind of, at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're both flirting with is, well, if you won't get your act up, you're fired as a co-host,
right.
Which I don't want to do.
Well, no, so anyway, so I started, and so I thought about, I had to think long and hard about that. And so I thought, well, at the end of the day, why is it that I am so against using Windows? Well, because I want to help other people switch away from Windows. Right after you and I wrapped up, I said, Rikai, I need some help. And I said, my day just went to crap. And I said, I need your help today if you have some time. And he goes, what's up? And I said, well, actually, never mind. I thought I was about to get into a huge argument with Chris, but turns out we're both on the same page and we see eye to eye. But he brought some serious concerns that I take very seriously up about video quality. And I started to think about the stuff. Everything worked out quite nicely, but we need to start working on this right now. So I'm taking the rest of the day off. I'm going to go home and start working on this. If you have some extra time, could you help me as well? And then he goes, or you could just do the obvious thing, which you're too stubborn to do, which is install Windows, install Skype, and remove the need for working on all of this stuff.
So I'm happy to say that I guess the positive side of all of this story really is that not only did we kind of quickly work through something instead of fighting, which probably would have honestly been a hell of a fight, we kind of came to an agreement on, holy shit, not only are we going to fix this, but we're going to fix it in a way that might actually make Linux more attractive as a podcasting platform. And that's big. Like, not only did we kind of just solve the immediate problem, and there's results in today's episode of the Linux Action Show immediately, but we think we may be onto something as a whole suite that could make podcasting more attractive on Linux, and that is exciting.
You know, the bigger thing is, I think that we both have buy-in, because if you think about it, if you take the three solutions, solution one is I install Windows. Now you have the buy-in because the show quality is where you want it. But if I'm staring at a Windows box for 3 hours a week, I would just be in a poor mood like the entire episode, then probably for the next 2 days.
Well,
and on the other side of the thing, if we do everything purely in Linux as we were doing it, the show quality is poor, then I have buy-in, but you're not. Then you're sitting out here being upset about the video quality, and so neither one of those solutions and the end are going to make as good of show content is if we can find a reasonable video quality solution that both of us have buy-in.
Plus, then I'd have to break my commitment to only Linux solutions and Lady Jupiter, which so far, as long as you count Android, I am 100% sticking to, and I intend to when we do broadcasts from the road as well. All right, so I wanted to share that story. Noah and I hugged it out, and there was, I actually thought, maybe a lesson there for some people listening. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I am actually, I love living vicariously through Rikai.
We all are in some ways.
Rikai, it does what I would do if the conditions were optimal. And that is just research the hell out of each component that goes into my next PC.
and that's kind of even underselling it. Research the hell out of each component for like a year.
Right. And sort of like learn to like not just understand it, but live it. And so that's why when the beard gets near a new build, when a new build is nigh, I'm really curious to see where you've ended up. And also I want to ask you, Rikai, does this long, exhaustive research process lead to you building a machine that's essentially a year old by the time you build it? And is that okay?
In some ways, yes, it does. But the way I build my machines is generally, I kind of try to future-proof them as much as I can. Like my current machine is just now feeling like it needs to be replaced. And I built that machine in 2009 and it's lasted me all this time. And I'm just now hitting the limits of it. So while it takes me like a year, at the same time, I also, I tend to still have like 4 years of life in it afterwards.
That's pretty serious. So I think that, when I look at my components, I try to read reviews. I try to look at benchmarks and things like that. But what's the process you go through to sort of pick the graphics and the CPU? Because I feel like just buying the best isn't necessarily the obvious way to go. It's sort of a waste of money. So what's your process?
I tend to also read a lot of reviews. I also go out of my way to look for reviews that aren't from like the main sites. So you get a lot of different opinions rather than just the essentially repeated reviews of most of the sites. And then I also cross-reference reviews on different sites where I tend to find a lot of disagreement. And sometimes I'm happy I do that because certain review sites tend to have different quality reviewers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a lot of the time, I find that Newegg reviews tend to actually be kind of crappy because people just go there and buy some components and then they leave the review. But a lot of the times they're just being told what to buy. So you end up with reviews where people don't actually know what they're talking about. So I tend to actually get a lot of reviews from places like Reddit. I just look up the hardware name on Reddit, and people that are actually usually pretty competent tend to figure out what's good and bad about the hardware, and that seems to help a lot.
So I got to ask you. I mean, obviously, the question is that you're getting close to a build. I want to ask you what's missing and what all parts you have. But when we were recently rebuilding hardware here at the studio, we had to do kind of like an accelerated version of your research process and kind of take advantage of some of the things you have been watching for a while. And we ended up with I think some 3 super solid rigs that, I mean, literally have not had a single hardware or software issue since the day we put them in production. I think this is probably a perfect moment to mention our Patreon at patreon.com/today. Now, go there to support the network and honestly make shows like this possible, where we just create it with the audience in mind and decide to make a great show. All this and more can be possible with your support at patreon.com/today. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. I feel like we're going to have more soon. In fact, I think maybe by next week we'll have like a, hey, I love user error, and this is going to be, we'll have like a pledge amount for people who are like, thank you for doing user error. I don't know what it is yet, but that's a little tease. So stay tuned for user error 3, where we might actually have that milestone. Now, back to the show. Mr. Rikai, you were about to give a sort of description of the hardware you've landed on after a while of research. What you got?
Right. So, first of all, the processor I ended up going with is a i7-5820 because on that machine, I'm going to be doing a lot of video editing and encoding and streaming. So, 6 cores actually makes sense for me, where it wouldn't for a lot of people, because turns out the more CPU power you throw at encoding, the faster it is. And other than that, I have a Asus X99A motherboard, which was graciously given to me by you.
Oh,
as a birthday gift, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Well, it was a little more than that. It was a birthday gift and a thank you gift for almost killing yourself and making Linux Fest Northwest possible.
oh, okay. And then I've also already gotten 16 gigs of RAM, which is actually only a quarter of what I'm going to be using eventually. And I can't remember if I have anything else. Oh, I'm borrowing a video card from you because the video card I eventually want is very expensive.
Now, all of this is in the pursuit, in some degree, of creating content.
Yeah.
But can we stop there for a second? What is that drive? Why do you want a machine that enables content creation? What is it about doing a Let's Play, or what is it about doing a video, or what is it about connecting with a community? What is the bigger picture here thing you're achieving?
I just enjoy making people happy, and I find that the best way that I can do that is by playing video games and talking to people about whatever's on my mind or whatever they want to hear about.
It's a little more than that, though, because you yourself, you've told me that it alleviates a lot of stress in your personal life too, to be able to create content, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely an outlet for me. I find it to be a huge stress reliever, and it kind of feels like the only place that I can really be honest, if that makes sense. And yeah.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by be honest?
Like, it's the only place I feel like I can be myself and not be judged. Like, I don't know. I have
because other people that are watching the content are also crazy passionate about that thing.
Yeah. Or it's kind of like the people that are watching me are coming there for me. So I feel like I can just be me. Where in a lot of situations, because I have like social anxiety issues and stuff, I don't feel like I can be myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it seems to be sort of, that kind of seems to be the basis a lot of times of starting a community is sort of that common ground there and people coming to around something that they all sort of enjoy. And so is it specifically gaming that you find to be fulfilling, or is there other content too?
There's right now it's just gaming, but eventually I do plan to have other content. I don't want to talk about what that content is. It's kind of going to be a surprise, but for now it's just gaming.
And I kind of, it's interesting you say that, you know, it's a chance to sort of be genuine and just be yourself, where in other contexts there might be, people might have judgment or something like that. But when people are coming to a place, an outlet, and they are electing to watch your stuff, they're sort of saying, I'm okay with whatever these things might be, and I want to watch this person's stuff. And that is an interesting, like, it's funny we come back to this word, a safe space. It is sort of a safe space to sort of express yourself. And I think that is that root is the fundamental difference between mainstream content and independently created content. Yeah. That spark of origin is what sets apart something that has been crafted for advertisers and something that has been crafted for a like-minded individuals. And depending on how many there are, and thanks to platforms like YouTube, you can reach them. And so that's part of the picture. But I'm kind of interested to talk about the second part of the picture, and that is sort of the financial side of making this possible. And you've recently, I think after some debate back and forth, decided to launch your own Patreon. And I'm wondering, what was that process like to decide this is something I'm going to actually ask for I'm going to ask for this thing. And it obviously opens up the opportunity for people to come back at you and go, you don't deserve that thing. You shouldn't have that thing. Why did you choose to expose yourself to that?
Honestly, I'm still not sure it's the right choice. But I figured if people are coming to watch me and they enjoy my content and they want to see it continue, then they can speak with their wallet, and I will be able to create more content, better content, more content that they love. And if people don't like that, well, then maybe I'll just stop my Patreon.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been watching different YouTube creators myself create content, and it seems like a lot of them are choosing to use Patreon over YouTube or, I don't know, whatever other crowdfunding, Indiegogo, whatever funding methods. It seems Patreon seems to be the one people are going with. What was it for you that drew you to say, this is the platform I'll try this on?
Patreon makes it really easy to give something back to the people that are funding you. And that is something that was really super important to me, because I felt like if I was going to ask money from someone, that they should get something back from it other than what they were already getting. And I feel like Patreon is really the only platform that will provide that.
Well, so this is kind of an interesting step. So you've decided to start your own channel, create content. You've been doing that for a while, but the funding thing's kind of new for you.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not doing the content on my channel justice for a variety of reasons, but one of the main reasons is because I just don't have the level of hardware to do what I want to be doing anymore. And I can get that hardware eventually, but I don't want my content to suffer in the meantime. So I figure asking for external help might expedite that process and in turn make the content better for everyone.
A novel idea, Rikai. Patreon.com/Rikai. Nice, easy. Well, you know, let's toss a link in the show notes too, because I think that's pretty nice. So, and Noah,
Yes, sir.
have you ever been through this process where you do something, you do it for free for a while, you almost feel like you should give it away, and then you have that awkward moment where you're like, maybe I should start charging for this?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it was, you know, I grew up in a household of small business owners. My dad was a small business owner. My father-in-law is a small business owner. My cousin's a small business owner. And so, you know, from even when I was, 10, 11 years old, I've always had little business ideas, little things that I could do. And so, going even into to college, Altispeed was not the first, business that I started. It was just the first one that was able to support my family. But I always approach things with, how can I make a buck out of this, or how could I monetize this? How could this turn into a capital stream for me? And oftentimes that conflicts with my natural passion to give things. That to me, that's the most enjoyment I've ever had in life, is giving other things to other people in some form or another. And so oftentimes, as I keep being reminded by my accountant and my wife, I have to focus on staying a business and running a good business, and not just giving our services and parts away. But and again, and so the way I've squared that nowadays is I simply have my personal account, and I write a check to Altispeed, or give money to the places that I think really need a little extra help, and then that way they still get a bill and they're still paying for it, and everything is square on the company side, and yet it doesn't interfere with my ability to be generous to other people.
I like that. That's a tight line to walk, Noah. Rikai, between the group of us, is the one that generally chooses to run Windows on a daily basis, which Noah and I cannot reflect on. But I think it speaks to this larger thing here, which is, how do you choose to draw the line here, Rikai? Because for me, I'm like, well, I could choose to do this with this Linux solution and document all of these things and tell this person all of the commands they need to run, tell them how to SSH into a thing, and do all this stuff. Or I could go with this out-of-the-box solution that I know works but isn't Linux-based. In this case, it's BSD-based. I'm curious where you draw this line. As somebody who's, you were just recently talking about having a rig to run Linux dedicated. This would be a dedicated Linux rig, but it's not your main rig. And I think that's probably because you've looked at this line and you've decided, I'm on this side of it.
Well, for me, I generally treat systems as utilities rather than platforms. So if a certain system can't do something, I'm just going to use another system. And it doesn't really matter to me whether it's open source or open software. If it can't do it, then it can't do it. So I just use whatever works.
Isn't there a point, though, where you go, this far, no farther, the line must be drawn here, and you say, I will not go through this process again. I will not allow this person or this company or this vendor to do this again. And you just say, never again. And you start building a fortress around yourself. Does that not happen? Mm-hmm. Or do you just say, well, yeah, Windows 10 includes Cortana, but I can right click, check a few boxes and disable that?
For the most part, yeah. I tend to do the latter.
Let me ask you this, Rikai. You when we were talking about Linux and running it on your machine, I asked you. I said, "Would you where do you think Linux fits in best?" And you said, as a daily driver kind of a thing, you would use Linux all the time. For development, use Linux all the time. It's primarily gaming platform that drives you to Windows. So, going off using that logic, does that make it any easier to answer Chris's question, or does that frame the question up a little easier for you?
No, because that just kind of goes back into the point that I just use an OS as a utility. It doesn't really matter what the underlying OS is doing as long as it works for what I want it to work for.
Okay, but for daily stuff, you've been using Windows for the last year, right?
Yeah.
And that has not been problematic for you, right?
Correct.
So why would you switch to Linux?
Mainly because I want to do more development stuff, and Linux is more suited for that.
Okay. But for the daily stuff, you're not going to be doing development on a daily basis, right? Browsing the internet and stuff, that could happen on either platform. Why not just have a dedicated development box, but primarily say with Windows for all of your day-to-day tasks? Where do you make that distinction to do something that would work on either platform, and then you're clearly choosing one over the other? Why do you make that choice?
That again comes down to more of a utility thing. I feel like once I move over to Linux as my daily driver platform, that'll just be a stable system where I can leave the state there and then come back to it later, and then do the very heavy technical stuff that I'm trying to do on Windows, and have the resource usage of that minimized.
And the culture aspects of it, and so I think both Chris and I kind of share this view of, anything that is the further from anti-large corporation controlled thing that we can get, the better the experience is going to be for us. Do you buy into that at all, or not so much?
When it comes to open source software, if the stuff exists, I'll prefer to use it for a variety of reasons, mainly because I know that I can go and talk to the people that made it if I have an issue.
Yeah.
And that is of big value to me. There's just some cases, though, where open source software just doesn't stack up yet. And hopefully eventually it will, but right now it doesn't.
Let me ask you this. What is the most burned you've ever been? What's the most amount of money that it's ever costed you to use Windows or Mac OS or some sort of proprietary program or software?
I haven't really been burned too heavily, to be honest. Anything that's broken.
That's kind of what I
thought. Everything that's broken, I've been able to fix. Maybe I'm just smarter than you know.
That could be. No, I admit that. I'm
just teasing you.
Well, no, I'm not sure what you do if a company like physically goes out of business and you can't activate their software anymore, and that costs you 20 grand. I don't think intelligence plays into that, but that was kind of what I thought. Is I think that my experience and my view on it is different, mainly because you and I have had very different experiences in the past, and I have some scars. And I think that's led me down the direction I am now.
Well, I will say that most of the software I do use on Windows tends to be stuff that's actually open source and just happens to be built on Windows. Like OBS, for example, is something that I use almost every day, and it's open source, but it's on Windows.
Right.
So the only huge part that's not open source is Windows itself. And so far, it hasn't burned me.
And I salute you, sir, for sticking it out. Actually, it's kind of fun because you get to be the person we get to ask questions of, like, Rikai, how do you live? How do you do it, Rikai?
I will say that there are some very large things about Windows 10 that have annoyed me recently.
Oh, yeah?
For example, currently, you can't tell your computer not to reboot itself after Windows updates. If you install Windows updates, you can delay a reboot, but it will try to reboot your system sometime during idle time, which is basically in the middle of the night, and I despise that.
I bet.
Because I'm one of those people that just leaves their computer on all the time and has a persistent state. And yeah, so I woke up one morning and my computer was completely reset. All of my unsaved documents were gone. It really pissed me off.
That is not a feature. No. Well, I guess I have one machine that I have for testing for Windows 10 from time to time, and I just leave it running every now and then when I've tried something, and I walk back to it, and it's usually running Linux, and I go, oh, it must have auto rebooted. That's good. That's wonderful.
I suppose you could look at that as a feature. It reboots itself into Linux.
Yeah, exactly.
I see that as a feature for sure.
Well, Mr. Noah, what are you doing for the rest of the week? After we just finished up a Linux Action Show a bit ago, what do you have on your agenda?
So rather excitingly, I'm headed out to West Virginia at the end of this week.
What?
Yeah, and so a viewer from the show wrote in, and he said, I'm thinking about starting a small business, and I was wondering if you had any tips for me, and I said, sure. And so I have gotten that question so many times that the first time I wrote, I kind of banged it out a little bit. And the second time I revised it a little bit. And about the third time I'd answered that question, I had it down basically exactly what I wanted to say. And I've gotten to a point now when I get that question comes in via email, I copy that template and I just change the, hey, so-and-so, thanks for reaching out. And then I just paste the rest of it in. So I sent that back and he found it useful and said, oh, that's really useful. And he goes, maybe you could help me with the project that I'm working on. And I work for a school district and I'm in charge of handling all of the technical stuff. And when the students come in the morning, they rotate through and certain students sit down in the principal's office and record the morning announcements. And then that is sent out over all of the televisions in the school and everyone watches the morning announcements and what's going on with school that day.
Yeah. My school used to do something like that way back in the day and I'm old.
We did too. We just read it though. We didn't have video. But, and so he says, all right, so what I want is I would like a more robust solution because right now what they're doing is they have two computers side by side and one has Skype and it calls out to the other computer that receives the Skype call. And then that is hooked up with an HDMI adapter over to their TV system. And he goes, obviously it's an idiotic solution and it really isn't. Yeah. And it's not very robust and I can't really do anything. And really I might as well just plug a camera with an HDMI thing into the TV system. I said, well, yeah. And he goes, so what would it take to set it up? So I laid out for him. I said, these are the devices I would buy. This is how I would connect them. This is how I would use them. And so he tried that and it wasn't working. And so he called me up and said, this isn't working. Could you help me work through some of these issues? And so I went through a little bit of it, and eventually hit a point and I'm like, you know what, man, here's the thing. We can continue to do this, and I can continue to try and walk you through some of this stuff. But the reality is, this is one of those times where if I was just there, I could fix it in about 30 seconds. And it would make for good show content. So why don't I just come there and work on this? And he goes,
Nice.
yeah, he goes, that would be great. That'd be fantastic. And so Friday, see, now I have to work around my kid's school schedule though. So Friday, when my son gets out of school, I am packing my whole family up and we are going to drive to West Virginia.
Whoa.
And I'm going to spend the weekend there working at the school, getting this broadcasting solution set up. And then we're going to use the holiday to drive back.
How long of a drive is that?
It is 1,200 miles from Grand Forks.
So you're going to be driving for a good part of,
16
7,
hours.
8 hours?
16
Oh my
hours.
gosh.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. For how many miles?
1,200. But it's, it'll
Are
be
you
all
taking
right.
the trailer or are you just doing
Yeah.
it in the vehicle?
No, I'll take the trailer. And I, of course, would not put anyone in the trailer. No, of course not. So they won't have
Why
to.
is that not a thing? I mean, let's just pretend like for a second that I don't know better because I honestly don't. Why are you not supposed to have people in a travel trailer when you're going down the road?
Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Because if you got into an accident, they would get hurt. Now, the very next question that comes to mind is, why is it any different in a Class A or a Class C?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, you ready for this? Because
Yeah.
you can't communicate with the driver. Because somehow if I could tell my wife, hey, we're about to get into a head-on collision, somehow everyone could snap their fingers and sit down and get a seatbelt on magically.
Don't think that's how it works.
That's not how it works.
Well,
So,
I honestly thought it was because the suspension systems were different.
yeah, I mean, ours is, I heard, people on IRV2, the forum, complained a lot about that and said, oh, you can't put anything living in there because it bumps around. I've slept in there and it's not, I mean, you can tell you're moving, but it's not like there's an earthquake or anything. It's no worse than, it was not much different than riding in the back of your RV, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, the way my RV's laid out, the bed is on the end point of the RV, the far point that hangs over the wheels, and it's just as bouncy as anything.
Yeah. So I don't buy into that. And, obviously nobody plans to get into an accident and if it did, it would be, catastrophic. But here's the thing. I evaluate things in terms of risk, and there is a risk, any chance that I will get into a car accident, but it is a 100% certainty without equivocation that my kids will go nuts, absolutely nuts, if they are sitting in a car for more than, 2 hours or 3 hours. And it is 100% certain that my youngest daughter is going to need to nurse somewhere in there, which means she's out of her car seat anyway. And if I stopped every time that happened, it would be a 7-day trip.
You'd be stopping every 2 hours.
Exactly. So I'm not going to put my kids or my wife in the back of an RV, but if I was, I would have a good reason to do so.
It's interesting. So I had a little test case recently. So I took Dylan on a road trip when you filled in for me on a couple episodes. Took him to Montana, and I think that was like a solid 6 days on the road trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I was flabbergasted with how well a 6-year-old boy, now 7, maybe he was 7 at the time, I can't remember, handled that. And fast forward to this last weekend where they go on a road trip where they're in the car the whole time, and it's only I'm not kidding you, go from a 6-day road trip to a 2-hour road trip, and they were going mental. Like in the car for 2 hours, they were going totally mental. And it makes a huge difference having like a little space you can move around in. That is all the. So you're going to go out to the what was it, West Virginia?
Charleston, West Virginia. I need to be there by noon on Saturday, and we're going to leave here around 3 p.m. on Sunday.
Are you going
Friday.
to boondock, or what are you going to do overnight?
Yeah. So that was it, right? I could either fly out there and just do the thing, but then I got to pay for a rental car and I got to pay for hotels and all that.
Yeah.
Or I can turn it into a little family vacation. The thing is, my kids absolutely love staying in the RV. It's super novel to them. Yeah. And they've been asking me ever since we got back to the lake, when can we go back? When can we go back? So I figured this way, what I'll do is I'll drive like 12, 13 hours and then stop at a Walmart and sleep for a couple hours and then finish off getting there. And that should put me there. If I sleep for a couple hours, then I should be able to make it there by noon.
See, people don't know, but once you become a quote unquote RVer, that's with an ER, you learn that you get to stay at Walmarts, most of them for free. And all of a sudden, Walmart goes from this horrible corporation that's trying to repress all of the middle class to a company that lets you stay there for free, and it's great.
And they also have discounts on a lot of their RV stuff. And the guy that I'm going, I'll send you some pictures. The guy that I'm going to, he has 40 acres. And so he
What?
Yeah. So he said, he's like, you know what, just come park your RV, in the middle of my backyard, because my backyard is huge. And let's see
That's
if I say
awesome.
this. Let's see here, sure.
So you're going to be straight up dry camping. Now, do you have a generator or
Yeah, sure I do.
You bring a generator with you and put it in the back, or how's your generator? What's your generator setup?
So I really like DC, and I do.
Yeah, I know you do. I do too.
I almost do like 99% of my stuff on DC, so I don't really need the generator. The generator really what it does is charges my battery bank, so I have DC. Everything I have runs
Right.
on DC. We even have a DC hairdryer and stuff. So the consumption of all my power, my laptop, my cell phone, everything is DC. So the only thing I need AC for is to charge the batteries, and the air conditioner requires, although I do have a battery bank large enough to power the air conditioner, I just don't have an inverter. I do. I don't have a inverter large enough.
On your, how many foot's your travel trailer?
18 feet.
You're telling me on an 18-foot travel trailer, you have a battery bank that can run an AC?
I do. You're
crazy.
I mean, specificationally speaking, I don't have an inverter to actually try it.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Wow. I'd love to see that. So what about this new Surface that you love so much that has Linux running on it? You got a DC plug for that thing?
I do. I have been dreaming.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah. So here, let me see if I can find it.
Microsoft makes a DC plug for the Microsoft.
No, it's an aftermarket thing.
And you bought it already?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course you did.
He bought it all in on that Surface.
It is the. Maybe it is made by Microsoft.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's just compatible.
Oh,
It is.
okay.
It's $14. I actually got it at Walmart. Let's see if I open this up, and then here you go. So I have this, and basically I have the similar one for my ThinkPad as well. But
So this is like an adapter that it just takes a cigarette adapter and it's like goes right into the Microsoft Surface power plug thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Damn. That's $15, huh?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Lenovo has two. There's one from Lenovo that's like $60, and then there's an aftermarket one that's like 10. And I have both, and I have not found a significant difference between either of them.
Huh. So last weekend, Hadia and I decided we wanted to go for a little bit of a road trip because we were just kind of we had been in one spot for a long time.
Cabin fever.
And we decided to hit the road, and we like to hit the road. It's always a conflict. Like before we start out, we're always like, where should we go? What should we do? How far is that? Can that fit the rig? With all of these questions, and we'll sit there for a solid 45 minutes, maybe an hour, in just absolute, total, paralyzed, undecided, cannot move forward state.
You drive, Chris.
Exactly. But eventually, you get the rig all put together, you take your poop hose away, you get it put away, you bring your slides in, you, at the very last minute, bring your awning in because we almost went down the road with our awning out.
Oh,
no. No, she caught it at the last second. And you bring up the jacks, and you just start driving. And this is true for life. It is true for business. It is true for content creation. We just started doing it. And we went out across Highway 20. We started heading east. And it was pretty quickly getting into like no man's territory. But Washington, I have been a few places now, and I got to tell you, Washington has a lot going on. And going over the passes in Highway 20, it was some of the twistiest, most up and down roads I'd ever been on. But I saw mountains that looked like the Grand Tetons. You see the Rockies, but there was this spot called Gorge Creek. And you drive over this metal bridge, and there's this gorgeous, it's like TV, or it's just almost like, it's like picturesque. It's just something you'd see from a TV show. And it's this parking spot. Go ahead, park here, and then they have this gorgeous paved trail that winds the side of a mountain, and it overlooks the Gorge Dam. And it's this giant dam that has just this perfect picturesque spot for it. And we're driving by, I'm like, oh, geez, I really wish the rig could fit in there. And, this is 3 hours into our drive, maybe 2.5 hours into our drive, and we're just going. The sun's starting to set. We have no idea where we're going to end up. As we're approaching this metal bridge that sounds like as you drive over, it's really loud. It's got like through the slots, you can see the water underneath you. As we go over the bridge, I see RV parking ahead. I pull off the side of the highway, and I roll down, or I slide the window open, and I can hear the waterfall. I can see the lake. It is this picturesque, beautiful spot that is absolutely free for RVs to park in on the side of Highway 20. And right there on a split moment, we decide, well, let's, park in here nice and tight. And we just spent the night there, ran the generator when we needed it, and watched TV off of our hard drive using our local media playback there, Noah. And it was great. And then in the morning when we woke up, oh, this is so typical when we're on a road trip. We wake up and we go through the process of actually waking up, getting caffeinated, maybe watch a little TV, eat some breakfast, and then we bring the blinds up, we start the engine, bring the slides in, bring the slides in, then start the engine. And right as I'm about to start the engine up to raise the jacks up, a lady pulls in front of the rig.
Oh, geez.
I mean, 5 feet in front of the rig. 5 feet in front of the rig. Like, I can't go anywhere. I'm boxing because it's rocks behind me. It's a rock wall behind me. And then this lady, and it's a wide open parking space. Huge. You could fit another 5-10 buses in this spot, and she parks right in front of me.
And of course, you can't go out there and ask her to move because you're still in your nice fancy Star Trek robe.
I'd get out in my Star Trek robe and I'd let her know what's up.
You're absolutely. Actually, my lady quickly opens up the window. Excuse me. She yells out the window. Nice. We're trying to leave.
I wouldn't be that nice.
Yeah, she was really nice about it. And so she moved her car, and we picked up and headed out. And right before then, there was a cop that pulled in and kind of like checked us out. And I kind of got a little panicky, but then he took off. So we took off and went to Winthrop, which is just a little bit further down the road. A cute little town, played in the river. It was a really kind of a fun just go out and do something and don't necessarily leave with a plan in mind kind of adventure. And I think that's my message is if it's business, if it's podcasting, if it's content creation like what Rikai is doing, just go out and do it. And even if you don't have the absolute end goal in mind, it's worth starting.
Yeah. That kind of brings it back to me coming to work for JB. I kind of ended up doing the same thing because you guys brought me out here and interviewed me and asked me if I wanted the job. And to be honest, it was kind of really intimidating. But I just said, screw it. And I just moved across the country. And
literally all the way. Yeah.
Now I'm here.
There you go. Well, so that'll bring us to an end this week. User Air was live on Sunday. Check jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for live times in your local neck of the woods when we have it. Air.show is where you go to get to our show page. Don't forget to subscribe to our new RSS feeds. They're fresh, and it's just the beginning, so why not jump in right now? All those linked at the show page. Again, if you go to air.show or Jupiter Broadcasting, we'll have it all linked there. Anything else we should mention here at the end there, Mr. Rikai? Is that it?
No, that's it.
Patreon.com/today to support the show. We'll have a User Air specific pledge level coming soon if you want to show your support for the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.